Alrighty, well, welcome to this week's Topper Ask Us Anything. As usual, a big news week, and I thought tonight might be a good time to actually revisit the news of Electricana, which took place last Saturday. So here we go with Electricana.
Electric car drivers and the RAC have welcomed both major parties' election commitments to expand the charging network throughout the state, saying the policies are a step forward towards reducing transport emissions. But the Motor Trades Association has been critical and says it's too early to invest in taxpayers' money in electric vehicle infrastructure.
At this electric car expo in Perth, early adopters are showing off their wheels to families considering moving away from fuel.
Okay, I really love this one because it's got more space for the family. Obviously, it's really economical, that kind of thing.
Sales have tripled, but EVs still make up less than 1% of new car sales in Australia. They're relatively expensive, starting at $43,000, and then there's range anxiety.
We went on our holiday last October because there was not enough charging stations. We went up to Shark Bay, no.
The EV drivers have been buoyed by promises ahead of next weekend's state election in WA. WA Labour's promises include a $21 million electric vehicle fund to build Australia's longest charging network. The Liberals have pledged $24 million for a similar fast charging network, but they've also promised stamp duty rebates for people who purchase EVs, while the Greens have earmarked $50 million for fast chargers and incentives. EV owner Rob Dean wants the next government to give a timeline on when the new chargers will be up and running.
We're getting to the stage where we need to act now, or we're going to miss the bus completely. And we're going to end up with a state that's way behind Asia, Europe, and America.
The Motor Trade Association disagrees.
I don't think government should be funding electric charge infrastructure at this stage, because it really needs to be a market where demand is driving that development. So we would be suggesting the governments need to wait.
But the RAC says with manufacturers setting targets to phase out petrol engines, governments need to incentivise EVs.
Could be something like lowering registration fees, cheaper parking for EVs. There's a lot of good policy levers that can be looked at.
The RAC's called for a national framework on electric vehicles. Claire Moody, ABC News.
Yes, so it was great to see, well, a couple of Teslas there at Electricana and some other EVs as well. It wasn't that great to see the Motor Trade Association, well, basically not in support of the government supporting fast DC charging. I personally find it a bit outrageous that clearly it seems they're being a bit self-interested. I guess that from their point of view, I guess they feel that EVs will affect their members' ongoing work or profitability. You know, maybe one of the claims is, you know, there's less servicing of EVs, so there's less need for mechanics, perhaps. But you know, I think we said this before, you know, many weeks ago that you know, when the horseless carriage first came, yes, you know, there was less work for farriers, but it's not that all the farriers suddenly became, and including the one that just put his hand up. It's not the case that all the farriers went out of work. I mean, many of them sort of, you know, died off from attrition and you know, weren't replaced, and others just adapted to other parts of the trade or industries. So yeah, I thought it was a bit disappointing that the MTA were sort of basically saying, well, they were claiming that the state government shouldn't be involved with that sort of funding, and yet I think state governments, federal governments, and others do a fair bit of ICE vehicle funding, petroleum funding, exploration funding, and many other things. So
wasn't there a tweet in this last few days that was worked out that for every day or week that the ICE department can put off EV adoption, they can make themselves another few $1 million a day or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that argument came about. That was Jack Rickard, the late Jack Rickard, actually had a theory that a lot of the short selling of Tesla was never going to make money because as the share price went up, their losses would increase. But he mounted he posited a claim that, or theory, that if some of those short sellers were backed by the oil industry, they would treat it as like a cost of business. And it was cheaper to spend several $1 billion in losing on shorting Tesla to at the time try and suppress their ability to grow rapidly, because at the time when Tesla's share price was suppressed, obviously it was much harder for Tesla to actually get funding, relatively, certainly compared to now. So his theory was that, yes, it doesn't make sense to short Tesla if you intend to make money in the future. But if you're intending to defend your current earnings through the petroleum industry, then that's about the only thing where it does make sense. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
But all this is so short-sighted. Even the Motor Trade Association is shooting itself in its own foot, because they're assuming that we live in a bubble in Australia. So if we live in a bubble, sure, that strategy of delaying may work, but the fact is we don't, and there'll become a point where you won't be able to buy a non-EV car from any manufacturer, because either the home country where the manufacturer is domiciled, and we don't make any cars anymore in Australia, either they forbid it or the manufacturer themselves have seen the light and have transferred to EVs. So what's going to happen is the longer, if they started getting on board now, they could prepare their members to start slowly shifting and slowly adjusting and amending their business models, rather than leaving it till the last minute, and then it's going to be an outside force, and it's going to happen, they'll be screaming that it's happened overnight and they need the governments to subsidise it, while at the same time they're arguing that, shouldn't subsidise EVs. It's such a short-sighted, localised argument.
And they had an opportunity to say, well, we're in favour of the state government embracing EVs, and then they could have advocated on behalf of their members to say, but we also encourage the government to have transitional arrangements or have TAFE courses or other courses on how to maintain EVs or other similar things. So they could have done a double positive and say, yes, we're in favour of EVs, and but however, we want the government to help our members do the transition.
And that's exactly.
Yeah. Instead, they've gone negative route, which is, it's just too soon, and we don't think governments should be involved in that sector, even though governments are involved in nearly every non-profitable sector that becomes a greater good.
Yeah. And that argument of delaying and then the shift having to be sudden and more painful applies to anything. So whether you're a farmer and you've got the Nationals advocating against action against climate change, at some point the world's going to decide for you, and you're going to have to do something. Or whether it's whether it's petrol stations, whether it's fossil fuel companies, whatever it is, any lobby that's really arguing in that industry's best long-term interest would be helping the industry to adjust, and because it's inevitable. So rather than delaying it and then being caught out,
they need to play the long game, clearly, and they're not. Yeah. And look, let's hope that there are enough people around that will remember this, so that when the MTA start whinging that they didn't see it coming and they didn't know what was going to happen, we can remind them that it was always there. It's, actually, one interesting thing on this news article, which gave me an opportunity, not all of us can be here live all the time, particularly Damon in particular. And I know Damon loves to correct me in particular whenever I say that his car is burnt orange. I went to the trouble of taking a screen capture directly from the ABC stream of that news article, and I've got to say that if that's not burnt orange, then I don't know what is.
Now,
I mean,
you
that
know
was
what?
broadcast quality ABC News.
That is absolute and total nonsense, because that looks so much different on the screen. Like both Damon and I were looking at his wrap from like 10 centimeters away. We're studying it and saying, "There's no way there's nothing orange about this at all."
But this is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. This is pure digital. Yes, we are. We very much appreciate Damon watching us in half-hour segments, because that's as much as he can stand at any one time. But well, you know, on that news article, it was burnt orange. Maybe watermelon red other times. Not that Saturday. But anyway,
I think you need to upgrade your screen. It's perfectly red on mine.
No, Ken, I took that from that was actually the ABC's article, direct from like live to air or whatever.
Yeah, I reckon there's a conspiracy theory in this. I reckon you were playing around with the RGB there.
No. We can no. You go to iview.net.au and you look at the ABC News. They keep the last 7 days, so you got until Friday night to have a look.
If her skin was green, then you'd say that the colour's been doctored, but her skin looks perfectly normal.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Peter. I couldn't agree more. That's the opinion of a man that knows his skins. And yes, this lady's skin is definitely skin coloured.
Yep.
And the grass is green.
I recognise skin, yeah.
Yes. So, and look, even her phone. Look, her phone is taking. It's all legit.
Oh.
I'm just really sorry, David, but you've just got a burnt orange car today. Anyway, on other things, I'd like to welcome a new member, Hossam. Tell us how you came to the club and why you're a member.
Hi, everyone. I'm quite excited to be part of the club. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah.
Oh, you're there? We just lost you. No, the interwebs aren't playing nice. Hossam, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So tell us about your car.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I don't know. It's a poor connection in here. Yeah, I was saying that I'm quite excited to be a member of the club. I basically ordered the car just 5 months ago, and it's pretty much my very first car in Australia. So I was looking for a car, and then I looked at the mega trends, and I can see it's inevitable that everyone will move to electric vehicles within this decade and next decade. And I was like, you know what? It's time for an electric vehicle. So yep, ordered the car, and it's coming in a few weeks' time, and I just need to learn everything about the EVs and everything I need to do as an owner, and to be aware of. And so when I got to know about the Tesla Owners Club through Google search, I was like, this is the perfect place to be. So yeah, and that's how I joined the club.
Awesome. Well, you've definitely come to the right place. We've got all the local knowledge that you could ever hope to gain access to. Obviously, you know, when you first get your car, so if that's in a couple of weeks' time, it's just going to be a very overwhelming sort of time. Being the end of the quarter, I think you mentioned, did you say that you've heard that there are 150 cars coming in?
Yes, I did. I heard it. I can't remember. I think it's through our Facebook page where I heard that there's a shipment coming soon from Port Kembla to here to Frio, and it has 150 Teslas or 150 EVs. I'm not really sure, but that's what I've read, or at least interpreted
Yes, no, that sounds about right. There's possibly even a little bit more than that. And being the end of the quarter, that's sort of standard for Tesla, where they will try and supply, they'll build all the international cars. Mind you, all these cars are coming from, I presume your car is either an SR Plus Model 3 or a long range Model 3?
It's, now I forgot. I'm embarrassed that I actually forgot, but it's a Model 3. I think it's the long range, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, so it's not the performance version. So all the long range and standard range plus cars, Model 3s, well, in fact, the Model S and X isn't available anymore at the moment. They're coming from Shanghai. So they'll be the made in China Model 3s, which should be really exciting, because it'll be really interesting to see how the fit and finish is. From everything we've heard, it's really excellent. So that should be, that'll be exciting news. You'll have Chrome delete, so you won't have the Chrome that you might have seen in other Model 3s, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's a really exciting time. But yeah, Tesla will generally make the international cars at the start of the quarter and then ship them out to the four corners of the earth. And they try and line it up so that all the cars will get delivered by the end of the quarter, which is the end of this month. So they're going to be super busy. At most, you'll probably have about 5 minutes of actual handover at the delivery center. But the great thing is, because you're here already, we can basically prime you with everything you need to know, at least for the first couple of days. And then you can always keep coming back and ask questions about anything at all. And, all of us were new EV owners, between, a few months ago and a few years ago. And we're all in the same spot. Thankfully, things have gotten a bit better. There's a bit more fast DC charging, which is great. But still, there's nothing that beats charging at home for its convenience. But initially, you don't have to stress about charging. Your car will come with a mobile connector. So it's like a mobile charger that's got a 10 amp and a 15 amp plug. So you can obviously, even from the first day you get it, you can just take it home and charge it at home from a standard outlet, which will be fine for the time being. And obviously you've got PlugShare. You've installed that on your phone?
Yes, I did.
Cool. So as long as you set your filters, if you look in the filter section of the plugs, for your car, you want to have supercharger, Tesla, and CCS. So that's the 3 items that you want. So as your car stands right now, it can basically charge at all of these locations. Oh, sorry, and Tesla.
Yeah.
And Type 2.
Type 2.
No, not yet, because you need a Type 2 cable. So what I'm saying is, if you've got your car brand new and you've got no adapters that you've purchased, these are all the charging locations you can charge at. So around Perth, there's quite a few. Now later on, you can borrow from the club for free a Type 2 cable, and then that opens up to quite a few more charging locations. You'll also need to get the ChargeFox app. And in some places, the Next Charge app. So it's ChargeFox and Next Charge. And you just need to plug in your credit card details for those two providers. And then you'll be able to charge at any place that actually has a fee, which is most of the actually all of the fast DC charging locations, except for UWA, where there is actually free charging for all EVs.
And that's a DC charger, so you won't need a cable for that.
No cable for that.
Yeah, DC chargers come with their own cables. But at the minimum, I'd suggest getting at least a Type 2 to Type 2 cable. They will enable you to charge at a lot of the shopping centre spots and some of the other charges around the place. And if you wanted to do a little bit more adventurous driving outside the city, there's a perfect example of a Type 2 AC charger. But yeah, if you wanted to go a bit further outside of Perth, you may want to consider the 32 amp 3-phase 5-pin adapter, or Harold actually at a very, very reasonable price. Have you still got any of those, Harold?
Yes, yeah. Through the club, you can get a 11 kilowatt. Well, actually, you can do 22 kilowatts, but for your car, Hosam, it'll do 16 amps 3-phase, 11 kilowatts. It'll charge your car at 70 odd kilometers per hour, and it's got a 32 amp 3-phase plug, which you can plug into any 32 amp 3-phase socket, and they're all up and down the coast and inland, and they are $750. Now that could be a viable alternative to, say, Tesla's HPWC, which is their, they call it their high power wall connector, which if you go to tesla.com, well, I was going to say /shop, but you just click on the Tesla's website and then click on the shop once you've localized it to Australia, which your web browser probably would do. If you go into Tesla's shop, you can buy a HPWC for $780. But that is, it's recommended that be a wall-mounted device that stays on the wall. Some people have attached leads to them and a plug, and on occasion they'll take it for a road trip. That's not its intended purpose. It's intended to be permanently mounted. But this portable charger that the club has is designed for portable use. It's especially good if you're renting. We have had another member that contacted us recently who's renting, and the landlord is going to fit a 32 amp 3-phase socket. In this case, it's going to be just a single phase power supply. And then he can then just use this portable charger, plug it in for the duration that he's renting. But you've got the advantage that you can unplug it and take it on a road trip. So that's a possibility as well.
Thank you. That is very. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, okay, Sam. I think for the UWA, you've got to register with the university and get an RFID or get an RFID registered with them to use their chargers.
No, not at the
and
moment.
Also,
Nigel, sorry to interrupt. Not quite at the moment. At the moment, it's actually running on free issue.
Oh, is it?
Yes, at the moment. That probably won't be forever. It's just that they've got unreliable communications and it's interfering with the validation process. So at the moment, it's just set to free issue. So anyone can use it freely without having to register. But sorry, Nigel, you can tell Hasham how to register.
You've got to contact UWA. I forget exactly where, but we can soon find out.
Yeah,
and the other thing I wanted to say, Hossam, was if you need some help, someone near you is usually quite happy to come out and show you around how to get through the menu system in the car and settings and so on, if you needed it.
Well, thank you so much. No, this is all very valuable, and thanks for all the the help that you provide and what the assistance that you're offering. I guess my biggest concern, and you kind of answered this in there, is that I actually live in a unit at a building in East Perth. So it might be actually difficult or challenging to try to have to request an installation of a wall-mounted power charger to charge the car. So I might need to really heavily depend on the public chargers to charge the car.
Actually,
so maybe I need to buy adapters and whatnot.
I know what you're saying sort of sounds right and logical, because often strata managers are notoriously bad at any sort of change or adopting any change at all. But actually, the environment is sort of altered. So even though this is an already built apartment, any new apartments, I think there's like a soft requirement that they do have EV charging. And if it's not actually a formal requirement, a lot of the developers have realized that they'll enhance the value of their development by having some EV charging available. So most of the new complexes are actually introducing EV charging from scratch. But what you can do is, if you approach the strata company, are you an owner or a tenant of the property?
I'm a tenant.
Okay, well that's a little bit tougher, but you can still approach the strata company and request that they facilitate the installation of at least a power outlet. Now look, even if this is a 10 or 15 amp socket that's metered to you, so they might have like a sub meter connected to it at your expense, depending on whether you want to stay there for any long length of time. What you can sort of explain to them is that it will enhance, it's good for their green image, it's environmentally friendly. Any power that's any way they facilitate your electric car from being charged is good for the environment as a whole. So they may warm to that sort of thinking. And as long as you explain that you'll pay for the installation, then hopefully they should be less reluctant to not approve that. But yeah. But obviously you can also quite easily charge your car. I mean, for instance, now if you were time poor, there's actually a ultra fast charger in Wellington Street at the RAC headquarters. At the moment, it's sort of got speeds similar to a Tesla supercharger. So it'll probably charge your car at about 600 kilometers per hour. So that's fairly quick. In 20 minutes, you'll have a substantial charge. And there are quite a few shopping centers that while you're shopping, you can get a charge. Some are free. I think most of them are free, actually. So there are many other places you can charge your car opportunistically while you're out and about.
But for those shopping centres, you'll need that Type 2 to Type 2 cable. But what I was going to suggest is, I know there's some units on Wellington Street in East Perth where they have storage units right next to the parking spots, and some of those storage units only have a lighting circuit, but others have a GPO, power outlet, power socket. And so what you can do is just slide the cable underneath that door and either an extension cord or the actual cable underneath that door. And yeah, if you can back the car in, or if you can park your car so that you're a close distance from that unit, from that storage unit,
yep.
Yeah, then you can put your whole charger inside the storage unit and lock it away. And that way, yeah, should avoid vandalism. But I know a lot of those units in East Perth, they get a bit of vandalism, even the locked car parks. So just be careful. But just make sure you have, so your car will come with Sentry mode, which means that it will have 4 of its cameras on while the car is being parked. It will come with a 3 USB stick, which will be inside the glove box, and that glove box is lockable with a pin. So you can set that when you get your car. But yeah, just long term, those USB sticks aren't the best once they fill up. And I think it's only about a 64 gig stick, so probably fill up in a couple of weeks. And then once it starts writing and overwriting, it will eventually fail. So you want to get yourself other, so there's a couple of solutions. So Nigel, for instance, has got a portable hard disk drive, which works well for him. I've got a micro USB, which I've got in there with an adapter. But just
SSD.
what?
You've got to specify SSD.
Yeah. Sorry. Yep. The micro SD, if you get one, you just got to make sure you get a high endurance or a pro or I forget exactly, but you want to get the more expensive ones, the ones that are basically designed for GoPros and those sort of devices. They're designed for lots of writes and rewrites, etc.
That's great, thanks. So is it like I just can go to, for instance, JB Hi-Fi and I can find like reliable robust hard disk?
Absolutely. So you can get all those. So SanDisk has got one, Samsung has got one. Yeah, a few of the brands have them. You can go to JB Hi-Fi. You can go to Harvey Norman. You can go to Officeworks. Most of those are a little bit more expensive than if you get it from Amazon. Just compare. But if you go to, I know Officeworks, for instance, they guarantee to match the price at minus 10%. So have a look on the Australian Amazon store, and if it includes shipping, they'll usually match it and give you an extra 10% off. So you can either do that or you can get it straight from Amazon, depending on what you want to do. But just make sure you check the pricing, because some of these cards can be incredibly overpriced. I've seen some of them as much as double the price at the JB Hi-Fis and Harvey Normans and Officeworks. So.
Okay, I'll look at that. Yeah, definitely will.
And I had a look at the pricing per megabyte, and the 256 gig gives you the lowest price per megabyte. So that sort of gives you the best value for money. But the cards go up to 1 terabyte. The 1 terabyte's fairly expensive, but yeah, 500 gig is fairly accessible. 256 is the best value. The other thing I would quickly mention is when you get your car, no doubt you'll be incredibly excited if you're anything like any of us. So when you get your car, I would just, don't be sort of saying that you're 100% happy with it or what have you if you're asked, or, just maybe say, look, I'm too excited to look over anything right now, but just let me take the car home and I'll have a look at it and let you know over the next 24 or 48 hours. And then once the excitement has dissipated a little bit, just in your own good time, just go over the car and have a look for any scratches, varying panel gaps and, just slight, just any issues that the car may have. And as soon as you find something, make sure you send an email to Tesla so that it's in writing, and so that way you can get it rectified. So as Harold said, towards the end of the quarter, Tesla is under incredible pressure to get these cars out. And so volume is the main driver. But yeah, Tesla's very good at rectifying anything that needs to be done, especially if you pick it up in that first day or two and you put it on email. So you might just have to wait and etc. But they will rectify it if it's their fault, obviously.
Okay, thanks. I will do that. Yeah, I've seen that. I've heard these tips from I think a YouTube video of someone in Perth who received a Tesla, and then he gave a very similar advice around checking scratches. So basically, if I do find anything that needs to be fixed, they have a workshop. So I take it back to, I think, Osborne Park. That's where the new Tesla.
That's probably where you'll have to take delivery. They're doing all deliveries out of Osborne Park now.
Yeah, that's where I've scheduled my. That's where it's been scheduled for me to pick it up at Osborne Park. And in terms of other accessories, such as the floor mats, and if there's anything else that I need to buy, like the representative that I was kind of dealing with is Joel. he's always been telling me, or at least he told me when I wanted to get some advice around buying any accessories, that they might have it in their store. Is it better to buy from, like, you know, online, or is it better not to rely on having things in their store because it might be out of stock, or, you know,
look, there's something to be said for OEM or original accessories, so definitely. But there are things that Tesla doesn't supply. One of the things I would suggest getting is maybe a screen protector for your you know, for your user interface for your screen. So I would definitely recommend that. And like we already discussed, the USB stick. But things like floor mats and that, they're, you know, very much a personal choice. So I got some of the Tesla ones, but they were a little bit heavy, and I've managed to find some mats which are a little bit better and a little bit lighter and a little bit easier to clean, and they cover more of the space. So, but yeah, look, it's a very personal choice. So,
all right.
See these mats. So these are the ones that I got originally, and if you see that one, it's got that big recess up the top in the middle, where it's exactly where Harold's got his pointer at the moment, his mouse, and in that area there, that's actually exposed carpet, which that mat actually doesn't cover. But if you go to the all-weather mats, even on the Tesla store, it does actually cover that space. So if you have kids or, the all-weather ones do, but they're fairly heavy. And yeah, I've got that one, which is for the frunk and the trunk, or the boot and the fruit, if you're in Australia. So those are quite handy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I don't know if I have any other questions now. Maybe because I really don't know what is coming, and I'm a bit naive with basically what to ask, and yeah.
Well, the good thing is you've got time, and don't feel that you have to think of everything you don't know, because you literally don't know what you don't know, and you don't need to understand everything about your car from day one. That sort of knowledge will come as you're driving it and getting experience. But don't feel bad that you can't think of everything, what to ask. You can come back next week or the week after or in a month's time. And there's some things that us owners that have had cars for years have only just learnt in the last couple of weeks that we never knew. Lots and lots of little tips and tricks and things to do.
So I was just going to say, don't forget, if you wanted to ask a question before next week's or during the week, Tokwav's got a fantastic Facebook page for members. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions on there as well. Are you on the Facebook page yet?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
I found 2 groups. There's the Tokwa and there's one called Perth Model 3. So I joined both groups.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah,
I found it really valuable. Like, I found the posts really useful.
That's great.
Cool. And we've got Mike. Mike, have you been on before?
I have not.
Well, welcome.
Welcome to your group. And so, like I was saying, I'm getting Model 3 Standard Range Plus in about 2 weeks. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So with one bonus that you may not even realize is with your SR Plus from Shanghai, it'll come with the LFP battery, which means you'll be able to set that to 100% and charge it all the way up every day, all day, and never worry about it.
That's
cool.
Fantastic, because I was like the whole only charging it to 80% thing. I was like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's sort of like filling up your tank and not really filling that last bit up. It's sort of like,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So just for her Sam's benefit as well. So with your battery, if it's the long range, will be more of nickel, so it will have a higher nickel
Yeah.
content.
Just going to say
And,
that.
yeah, so that one, so you can charge that to 100%, but I would only do that if you're planning to go on a long trip. And generally what I would do is I would set my charger so that, let's say we were to leave at 7 o'clock, it would finish charging at about 6:45, 6:30, and that way it wouldn't sit at that 100% for too long. There's no problem really. But if you wanted to maximize the life of your battery, and you don't really have to worry about it because, Elon himself has said that the current batteries, at least in my car, I got my car about 16 months ago in September. Am I still counting that right? Since September 2019. And those batteries are supposed to last anywhere between 300 and 500,000 miles, which is, huge. But the new batteries are probably closer to 1 million mile, which is 1.6 million kilometers. So, and after that, you can pull them out of the car and, connect them to a house. But the warranty is only about 7 years? And depending on which model you have, I can't remember. You guys probably remember.
160,000.
I think it's an 8-year warranty on the battery and the drivetrain.
No. On the threes, I think it's 160,000 Ks and
yeah, right.
8 years.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 7 years.
Or 7 years.
Okay, they might have changed that.
Yeah.
They change them around all the time. But yeah, I mean, initially they were lifetime warranties, but Tesla being a much more mature automaker, they don't have to take on those liabilities onto the balance sheet. So so the battery is actually better than the original batteries, but the warranties are much less. So, but yeah, no, it's pretty sure it's 7 years. Yeah.
With the long range model, so that actually uses a different battery chemistry.
Yes,
it is. Yes,
it is. So Shanghai have pioneered that. So they're using the LFP batteries for the standard range plus.
Yep.
And for the long range, they're using the standard, or Tesla's previous standard NCA, nickel, cobalt, aluminium batteries. And obviously, in a couple of years' time, they're going to transition to the 4680, different versions of the 4680 cells later. But at the moment, they're all standard. So, yeah, so Mike, with yours, you'll have the luxury of being able to go straight to 100% and never worry about it. For Hasham, you just charge on your car when you set the slider for charging percentage. There will be a couple of, it will start at 50% up to 100%, and each 10% notch, it'll have, is it drive and trip? No, what's it? Daily.
It's trip.
Yeah, it says daily, and then trip is at the right-hand side near 100%. So
trip is at 90% and above.
Yes. So you can charge your car to 80% easily, even 90. 90 is perfectly fine. The car doesn't whinge at you. If you keep on charging at 100% for a few occasions in a row, then what will happen is you'll get like a warning message that says that continually charging your car to 100% may increase its degradation. Do you want to reduce the charging level to a safer level? And if you hit yes, it will then automatically reduce it to 90% and leave it there. So the good thing is there's nothing you can really do to your car that will permanently damage it, or even damage it in time that it won't already warn you about if it needs to. So that's one great thing, is these cars are very safe that way. They will help you in every way to not damage them or not wear them out prematurely.
And what's actually worse is not necessarily charging it to 100% and then quickly, starting to drive the car and discharging it, but leaving it at 100% for an extended period of time. So if you were to charge it to 100% and, go away on holidays or what have you, or keep it plugged in with and have the charger charging it and keeping it at 100% for extended periods of time, that could potentially, really increase the degradation. But I just wanted to check, and I stand corrected. So you guys were right. It's actually 8 years. So Richard and Harold, my apologies. It is definitely 8 years. 8 years and 160,000 for the standard range. And if you go to the long range, it's 8 years or 192,000 kilometres, whichever comes first. So that's the Australian warranty at the moment. And after 8 years, they guarantee a minimum of 70% retention of the original battery capacity.
Cool. But again, Mike, you can ignore the 100% rule because you can just dial straight to it and it's all good. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. You're muted.
You're muted, Mike. You need to unmute your mic, Mike.
Don't drop the mic. No, you're still. Oh, you've got to. You actually, no. Go on, say something.
No.
No.
So you're not actually muted on Zoom. It must be to do with your computer.
What you should do is go to the camera section and then just change the audio source to default. Or you either manually change it to what you're using, or you manually change it to default. That happened to me a couple of weeks ago where it wasn't working, and then it will heal itself. So when you go onto video settings and audio, you can then change the microphone source to either same as system or to whatever you're using. And if you just change it backwards and forwards, that will sometimes fix it. But while you're doing that, we'll move on until you fix it. Is there any other news or anything that's popped up in recent times? Apart from there was a, oh yes, Richard, go Richard.
I was listening to a podcast this morning and I sent off an email to earlyaccess@tesla.com. I've done it already and included my VIN and said I'm living in Australia.
Living the dream.
We'll see what happens.
Awesome.
Explain to the folks what I've done.
I saw a good email from Harold advising members not, because some people have been putting their VINs up and sending and tweeting them at Elon, and that's good advice from Harold. You know, you don't really want to be disclosing your VIN publicly like that.
Yes, so
yeah, but you did over email, so
it was Elon Musk's fault because he basically said that they're looking at expanding the FSD beta, basically doubling it from the 1,000 they currently have, and he quite naively said, you know, if you want to be in the beta tester group, then just let me know. And I think well, there were at least tens of thousands did let him know directly via tweet. And then Andre Karpathy then sort of replied to a tweet saying that, well, you could email engage, early access at tesla.com. And then I think Elon, you know, that email went crazy. We actually did get some confirmation via an international service center that they did want to have basically your country of origin, your name, country of origin, driving style, and type of roads that you drive on. Now, then Elon has subsequently followed that up with a tweet that said that, you know, in about 10 days time, they will add a button to effectively turn on that requests that you request that you want it. And he sort of alleged that if it's legal to be done in your jurisdiction, that they will just allow that to be done. And I guess that's,
is that just the US though? That's the question.
Well, no, because there was someone that tweeted that from Europe that said we demand FSD beta in Europe, and I think Elon replied with something along the lines of, well, we'll try our best or something. It's up to the regulators. Europe's actually quite backwards as far as any sort of autonomy. So in Europe, for instance, you can't use your car to get off the freeways, because in Europe they have those notoriously short runoff lanes where it basically goes into that clover leaf and a very tight bend, hard on the brakes. And in Europe they've actually mandated that Tesla restricts the amount of steering force the autopilot can apply, which means it can't basically be used on tight corners. So Europe is actually quite backwards compared to most of the rest of the world. I think by comparison, I think Australia is pretty similar to the States, although we did lag behind on navigating autopilot, but that probably had more to do with Tesla adapting their maps and other things to suit, or checking that sort of thing. So
what are the rules in Australia?
Well, at all times the driver is responsible, but I think our regulators are more relaxed about lane keeping aids, so that I don't think they have any particular rules about how much force the car can apply to the steering wheel or how much it can steer the car, as long as you're actively aware of it and can easily override it. So for instance, when you're driving a car, one thing you'll get when you're on autopilot is the car will expect to detect your hands on the steering wheel, or should I say, when it doesn't detect it for more than about 30 seconds, it will then give you a nag, which is basically, it'll highlight like, in fact, there'll be a little message that says, lightly apply pressure to the steering wheel. And then if you ignore that and still don't touch it, or it doesn't detect you touching it, it'll have like an outline border of the screen will sort of light up as warning you, and then it'll get more and more rigorous. And then the last thing it'll do is give you some warning beeps. And if you still ignore it, it will basically put the hazards on and bring your car to a gentle stop on the road and stay in the lane, and basically stop the car. So for the car to detect that you are holding the steering wheel or actively participating, it requires about 0.5 kilogram of force. But to disengage the car, it requires about 2 kilograms, which is nothing. It's
Harold, I'm sure it's got to be sort of two-dimensional in that the amount of force, but I think the other dimension must be time as well, because I've noticed quite often I'm not necessarily overriding autopilot, but I'm just holding the steering wheel steady in a position where I'm putting a little bit more force and it wants to go another way. And I'm not necessarily, and it doesn't feel like I'm putting the usual amount of force. It seems like it's incredibly light, but because I've had it in that position for an extended period of time, it reverts back to, manual. So I wonder if there's a time element to it as well, rather than just the force.
It's interesting. I haven't really sort of studied that. I mean, sometimes I've inadvertently disengaged it because, it must have thought it was just too much force. Frustratingly, sometimes too, you can actually have your hand on the steering wheel. Oh, and some people have done this where they will grip it really hard, and they'll think that gripping it is actually going to make the car detect it. But if you just grip it, but don't apply any sort of clockwise or anti-clockwise force, then it will not think that you're touching the steering wheel. There's no force grip pressure sensor. It's just the actual torque on the steering wheel.
It's got to be turned left and right or left and right. And I've had sometimes when it says, apply the turning to the steering wheel, and you go jiggle, no, jiggle, no, jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Yeah, now it's switched off. Because you just get stronger and stronger and you go bugger it. And you got to turn it back on. But I haven't noticed what Pete said about it's turning, unless you're holding it in steady in a position and the car wants to turn and it can't. And so it comes.
But the car, so yes, but the car wants to turn. But I've just found that if I've had the steering wheel in that, so basically the way it works, you can feel there's a slight amount of give. And if you sort of turn it a tiny bit to the left, you can feel the, the opposite force coming from the self-steering, and then you go to the other end. So you can go a little bit one way or the other. And I've noticed that if you lean on one of those boundaries, and if you hold it in that position for an extended period of time, so maybe 2 or 3 seconds, ever so lightly, it will eventually click over to manual. Not because you've put the required amount of force on, but because you were just leaning it on that limit for 2 or 3, 4 seconds or whatever it is. So that's, I mean, maybe, yeah.
Well, the thing too is that the steering wheel is directly connected to the front wheels, to the steering rack and pinion. So one thing that might be happening is, sometimes, I don't know if it's imagination, but your car isn't quite going in the direction that you exactly want it to. So you can sort of just nudge it just a little bit, outside of where it was going to go because it's a better position. Maybe what the car then detects is it presumes what it's trying to do is the wrong thing, or it's not working properly. And it just sort of freaks out or just gives up and says, oh, there must be a problem, I'll just disengage. Actually, and speaking of disengaging, that's one good point for all new owners, is the riskiest thing with using autopilot isn't so much its erratic behavior on occasion, it's that you're not aware of what state the car is in. And the most dangerous state is that you think it's in autopilot when it's not. So there's been so many times when I've absolutely thought it was in autopilot and then just effectively let go of the steering wheel, and the car will drive generally pretty straight depending on the camber of the road, but it will just gently drift off the road, or towards a curb. Now, these days, the cars have got new software features. So one thing that you should make sure is turned on is lane keeping assist. So it will actually, if it's a well-marked road and you just let it drift without your indicator being on, it will detect that you're going to cross the road, and it will actually pull the car back to the center of the road, and it'll give you like a little warning beep. I think the lane will turn, that dashed line or the curb will turn red, and it will then direct the car, and it'll have a little message that says applying corrective action or something like that. So make sure all of those things are turned on, those safety features. Another thing, it's personal preference, but it has a forward collision warning setup as well. Me personally, I put it on to early, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to know as early as possible if it thinks I'm going to hit something.
Yep.
And I don't mind.
It's pretty good. It doesn't come up with too many false positives. So no. Yeah.
No, generally it's actually a positive. You might have gone, well, I already knew that was going to happen, but I was intentionally sort of approaching that car quickly, and I was going to brake late anyway. But humans, get distracted. So yeah, I'd much rather have one or two, not so much false warnings, but one or two conservative warnings, or whatever you want to call it, than be warned very, very late, and then you have very little time to do anything about it. But
actually, Harold, another thing to maybe make mention of, especially when it comes to new owners, is, and so you were getting to that point too, in that, yes, so you think autopilot is on, but it's actually off. So that's one instance. Another instance is there's 2 ways to disengage autopilot. And one of the ways, so let's say you disengage autopilot by adjusting the steering wheel. So you don't touch the brake, you just override it with the steering wheel. What happens is the car remains in cruise control. And so it might actually be slowing down because there's a corner or what have you, or there's a car in front of you. But once that car goes, or you go past that bend, all of a sudden the car will start accelerating without you pressing the accelerator. And you think there's something wrong with the car, or the car is accelerating, on its own wheel. It's actually user error, because all you did was disengage auto steer. You didn't disengage the whole autopilot. So to disengage the whole autopilot, you've got to touch the brake, or on the right-hand side where the stalk is, you just press the stalk up. And the stalk, you don't have to go past the detent, and it's probably better if you don't, because that can cause another problem in that you can inadvertently put it into reverse if you're driving less than about 3, 4 or 5k an hour. So all you need to do is just move it up, but you don't need to go past the detent, and that disengages autopilot, or touch the brake. But yeah, just remember, if you override autopilot with just the steering wheel, it will remain in cruise control.
And if you look at your dash and you've got a steering wheel in the middle, if it's grey, you're on cruise control. If it's blue, you're on full autopilot.
Yep.
For the newbies.
Yep.
Cool. Welcome back, Carmen.
I've got my Tesla hat on.
Very nice.
Dinner out again tonight. So does that mean that we're not going to get the upgrade on driving, full self-driving?
Oh, well, no. Well, we might get the beta program. So Elon Musk did tweet out, if anyone's interested, just to let him know, and thousands did. And then he changed it. Well, someone else said to send an email, and now Elon has gone back and said, well, not gone back. He's subsequently said that they're going to offer a button or basically a switch on your screen, in your software menu to request that software. But
that'd probably be from version 9, would you say, Harold?
No, he said 8. Well, I think he was implying 8.3. He was sort of implying that 8.3 has got 1,000 improvements, and that was coming in the next couple of weeks. So that sort of dovetails nicely into the 10 days to get the switch. So it's a little bit hard to tell. But I think, Carmen, unless you probably have a very slim chance of getting the FSD beta if you haven't paid for full self-driving.
Right.
It unfortunately is what, $10,100, I think.
And once that new version, the new version of the software comes to Australia, you'll have, did he say 10 days or 2 weeks, Harold? I can't remember.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, was it? Yeah, before the price is increased by 2,000 US. So probably roughly 3 grand Aussie. So probably go from roughly 10 to roughly 13.
And just because you get the button on your car to say full self-driving beta doesn't mean you're actually going to get it. You can click on it, but it might not come down then.
Yeah, might cost you $10,000 click.
No, this is for the beta. So what it is if you haven't bought full self-driving yet, and I'm really, I've done well to not go full self-driving in air quotes because it's not that yet, but it will be eventually. If you want to participate in the beta program, you'll probably have to stump up the 10K, because I don't see Tesla giving a non-FSD ticket holder the beta.
Yeah. So are they offering anything though, or just the opportunity to buy it? But can't you buy it anyway?
Oh no, you can buy it. No, you can buy it today. You can, in fact, well, I can't because I've already bought it, but you can look on your app and under upgrades, options and upgrades or something like that. And it's super easy. There's zero friction as far as buying it. You just click buy, and if it's an iPhone or a Google phone, you just double click your side of your phone, and it'll pull that 10K out of your credit card before you knew what happened.
And it's 30% cheaper than buying it in the US.
It is.
There's never any problem spending money or getting money. They make that really easy. But what is he actually offering that's special?
Yeah. Okay.
Promise. No, $10,000 promise.
No. So for someone who hasn't got FSD in a Model 3 today, you've got autopilot, so it'll do your lane keeping. So it'll hold its position in the lanes. It will follow cars in front. So if you're coming up to traffic lights and there's a car in front of you, it will come to a stop behind that car.
Adaptive cruise control.
Yep, it's the adaptive cruise control, but it will not For instance, if there were no other cars on the road and you were driving towards a stop sign or towards a traffic intersection, traffic lights, it will happily sail through those traffic lights if you're not paying attention, or a stop sign or a roundabout or a give way sign. Now, if you, and also, well, and that's basically what autopilot does for free. That comes with the car. If you then pay $10,100 at the moment, what you'll get that you can use today is when you're driving an autopilot, if you want to change lanes automatically, you can just gently click on the indicator and the car will then look around, and if it's safe to change lanes, it will do so at your request without you touching the steering wheel. Sorry, you've got to apply a little bit of pressure on the wheel and it will then do the lane change automatically. It will give you what's called navigate on autopilot, which is you navigate to a destination, and if you're on the freeway or some of the highways such as Tonkin Highway, some parts of Leach Highway, mainly freeway and the very major highways, it will basically automatically get on, you also automatically take the off ramp exit lane and basically steer that itself. So it'll put the indicator on by itself, usually fairly like appropriately, and get off the off ramp. There are places where if you're going from, say, the freeway to say Roe Highway, you will actually take the exit and then merge onto Roe Highway automatically without you intervening. That's navigate and autopilot. It will do automatic parallel parking and perpendicular parking. Yep. And I've got to say, parallel parking, it just absolutely nails it perfectly. It's so good. You know,
and it does it fairly quickly too. It does it as fast as the average driver, I would say.
Yep. My only criticism of it is I think it parks a little bit too far forward. I then usually adjust once it's finished. I'll then park, like reverse a bit to get a bit more space.
Yes.
Often to the car in front, but the actual action of doing the parallel parking is spookily perfect. It's just got the perfect algorithm to do that.
So Harold, I've had it happen once where I've had a P come up and I've used it. All the other times it just doesn't appear. What's going on?
Just make sure, are you driving a little bit past the driving spot?
Just like
probably
I
a meter
do.
or two?
Yep. And once it appeared, oh, that's interesting, but only once ever.
That's interesting. I get it quite often. You might need to slow down a little bit. So what you might need to do is, if you
it's Richard's heavy foot, that's what it is.
I drive like an old granny when I'm not racing you.
He's screeching in with his handbrake on.
It can be a bit variable. It might depend on, you know, I've been on places where there's brick paving as the road surface, and that sort of gets a little bit, you know, it's got to be fairly clear where the bays are, rather than just an impromptu gap in a road. It wants to basically see the line markings, preferably. It'll then do quite well.
And usually we'll only do it if there's a space between two cars, especially with perpendicular parking. But with parallel parking, I've had a couple of occasions happen now where it's done it even without the two cars. So as long as there was a car, let's say, in front and then a curb or a sign, it would use those two sort of physical structures, I suppose, as a way of finding, the spot. So
there's no way of getting it to work. It's just got to say, oh, P, I'll park here.
Yes, the P, what it does is it detects that it's happy to do a parallel or a perpendicular park at that location. It'll identify it itself, and by showing the P, you can then stop. If it's parallel park, you put it in reverse. No, I think you just stop and hit the start button. There's a blue start button. Once you've come to a stop, that you can engage. But it's only
very obvious.
It's discretion. You can't request it. You can't sort of say, well, trust me, I know there's a place you could park, and just go and do it. And unfortunately, there's no way of sort of telling the car where that is. You know, you can't sort of like point that it's behind the car or in, you know, wherever. But so that's another feature. I think, oh, and it'll also, with FSD, automatically stop at red traffic lights, stop signs, give way signs, and roundabouts. It won't go through the roundabout by itself, but it will basically come to a stop very close to the white line of the roundabout. So that's a great feature.
And it will also stop for green. I was just going to say, we'll also stop for green traffic lights if there's no lead vehicle in front. It needs you to press down on the stalk or touch the accelerator lightly to confirm that it is in fact a green light. It used to do that all the time, but now it takes the lead car in front of you as confirmation. So yeah, it's slowly but surely becoming more autonomous.
You're going,
What about pointing out traffic cameras?
It doesn't do that, but what it does though is, so it takes its speed limit on the road that you're traveling from the maps.
Yes.
But let's say there was some traffic work going on, and there was a 40-kilometre speed sign on the side of the road. The cameras pick that up now, and will actually slow down to 40 kilometres, even though it's a 70-kilometre zone, and even though the maps say 70 kilometres. So the cameras are recognising the speed signs now.
And since you mentioned that, Pete, one little thing that can be annoying is if there's not a clear standard speed sign past the roadworks, it'll sometimes persist with that roadworks 40 k's an hour limit. And the only way to get around that is basically to go off autopilot and just use TAC, traffic aware cruise control, which will allow you to bump up the speed to, let's just say 70 past the roadworks. Because sometimes the roadworks, they might just have end of roadwork sign, and everyone knows you just revert back to the normal speed. But since Tesla optically now look at speed signs, once it recognizes a speed sign, if that sign is different to what the map says, it trusts the sign until it sees another sign, or until you go through a region where on the maps the speed limit has changed.
You can just use your scroll wheel to bump up 5 k's an hour. Doesn't
No,
work.
you can't. Not everywhere. No.
Sometimes it'll let you. Other times you'll still stick to that 40k. But you can press the accelerator and you can override it. But it's not a good habit to get into, because effectively the car is steering by itself, and while you have your foot on the accelerator, you've disabled your automatic braking. So it's not a safe way to override it, but it is a way. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those little frustrations. So you got to choose, like Pete says, you got to choose to either actively accelerate the car and let it steer, or you steer and it will do the speed. And I dare say the latter is better. So you just steer and then you let the car handle the speed. So then all these emergency features are in place except for the steering. In fact, actually, in steering, if you actually drift across the center line, it will pull it back if you've turned that option on.
I've had that happen.
Yes, yes. It's pretty cool. It doesn't always work. So, if you're into experimenting, you can still let it drift a bit, and it doesn't always catch it. But when it does, it's quite cool. And actually, to me, it's happened twice where I've been like on a bit of a tight bend where I was sort of like going over deliberately, and it actually sort of misinterpreted it and actually went to reef the car to the left. And what happened was it sort of then disengaged as that happened. And as I was grabbing it, it sort of oversteered and I had to like correct it. So sometimes it has a bit of a sting in the tail, but
mind of its own.
Maybe just for Richard Cooper's purpose, we should mention that when Harold says let it drift a bit, he's not talking about letting the back run loose.
I don't deserve this reputation. Not my Tesla. Maybe in my Lotus, but not my Tesla.
Your reputation precedes you, Richard.
You're just jealous. You're just jealous that
I
I've
am.
got the
I
drag
am.
strip, mate. Yeah.
I am. Let's be honest. I am. But actually,
speaking
on
of
that
which,
point, yeah, that's a very good segue. Thanks, Harold. On that point, might not have to be jealous for too much longer, because got an opportunity for all of us to, showcase our driving abilities. So, Tokwa, Tesla Owners Club, have organised a session at the electric go-karts, the indoor go-karts in Joondalup for the 2nd of May. So we've got a pretty good discount, actually. So usually it's a $65 fee as a minimum for an adult, plus you've got to buy a $4 balaclava, which is compulsory, so $69. And we've got a group discount at $49, which I think is really good. And we've got a few extra laps thrown in, and we'll get the whole place to ourselves. But it is limited to 48 spots, so 48 drivers. But you can bring as many spectators as you wish. Spectators can, watch the racing. There's food and drinks that you can purchase as well. And there's arcade games. So you can have a go at racing people on the games. So that's going to be on Sunday afternoon, the 2nd of May. It's going to start at 3 o'clock and finish at 6:30, if I've got it right, have I? Yes. So what we're going to do is there'll be 2 races for each person as a minimum, and then the top 7 fastest times qualify for a final shootout, and positions 8 and 15 will qualify for a semi-final, with the fastest person from the semi-final proceeding to the final shootout, and finish at 6:30. So what Harold's going to do is he's going to send out an email to all the Tokwa members, so they'll get first preference. So that $20 discount is basically your annual membership paid for, just with that one event, which is pretty good value. And then we'll probably, Harold, leave it just for the Tokwa members for about a week or so, do you think, before we open it up to the Facebook page?
Yeah, I think, a week or two. See how the bookings go. We'll just use try booking again, as we did with the Gravity Discovery Centre. And look, I expect that to sell out pretty quickly. So, but we'll set that up in the next couple of days. And it should be an awesome event. Should be.
I went up there with my 30-year-old son a couple of weeks ago. He was terrible. He was second last. No, he was last. That's right, of the group, and I was second last. So straight lines I can do. Corners, nah. Forget corners. No. Great fun. They just slide around. They're awesome.
Well, I had a chat to Jürgen as well, and try and get him to come along, and he expressed interest in coming along as well. So hopefully we can save a ticket for him, and he should be able to set some benchmarks for us. That's for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, just let me know, Pete, if you want 1 or 2 reserved, and we'll just offer 46 or 47 for sale, and then keep 1 or 2. So that's totally cool.
Maybe definitely reserve one for Jürgen, and maybe for Nigel as well, if he doesn't hear this, or maybe Richard, you can let him know.
Not that, Nigel.
Oh. Not that, Nigel. Not that, Ferrier.
Cool. So any other bits of news or anything that don't know if there's that much that's happened this week.
There's a couple of things.
$110 last night.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Big jump, actually.
Bloody needed to.
So Tesla's gained more value last night than any times more value than its
entire history.
Worth when it first listed.
I thought it was an error.
But ironically, if you want to take the moderate view, it's really just reverted back to where it was a week ago.
Yeah.
Except it did it in one day.
I wish it was an error, because I transferred some money into my trading account, and I was watching a thing, refreshing it. Is it in? Is it in? And yeah, it just wasn't going in. It didn't come in till this morning. And God, I missed out on 20%. But anyway, that's trading for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was going to go in and buy some more, but I think that was God's way of telling me that it wasn't meant to happen, that he probably thinks I've got too many Tesla as it is.
I must admit I bought 700 at 700 on the way down, but yeah, I didn't have a lot of spare cash, unfortunately, having just found out what my tax bill will be for coming up. But anyway, look, I just got a couple of questions.
Tax bills are good. It means you're making money.
Exactly.
Well, this is because my financial advisors told me to sell and have an exit strategy, and I was brand new to trading. And and I reluctantly I held off. Eventually, I sold some and bought them back. They said, "Oh, you made some money." I said, "No, but I lost my shares." Sort of idiots. So I never.
You should remind him of Warren Buffett's favorite holding period. You know what his favorite holding period is?
Forever, yeah.
Forever, exactly.
Anyway, that's the first thing. The second thing. Oh, look, I just this is a by the by. The picture behind me. Does anyone sort of get what's going on there?
Yeah, it's two.
Is there a roo and a sign?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why should a roo be next to the sign?
Well, it's not. It's on the side of the road. It crossed the street. It crossed the road.
It was actually.
Why did the roo cross the road?
It was actually next to the sign. I passed. I went, what the? And I drove back, and it sort of moved. It's obviously beast. And I went back to take a picture and actually sort of ambulate, pentambulate or whatever it is, across the road. So I missed the.
That's called hopping. That's called hopping, Peter.
No, it's pentapedal motion. That's right. So because it uses its tail and the four legs. That's pentapedal. But anyway, this was on the way to, not to Collie, but to Wellington Dam, and so it's about 50 k's from Bunbury. There's no other kangaroo sign on the way. A lot of it's just bush. For some reason there's a kangaroo sign there, and a kangaroo next to the sign, and that's. I mean, how come I didn't see any more other kangaroos the whole trip?
He was just following the signs.
It looks so normal, but in fact, it must be an incredibly rare occurrence. There's nothing different to the bush there. It wasn't as though there was a track there or anything like that. It was just, the chance of that happening just must be incredibly sort of small. Yeah. Anyway,
can I segue into another kangaroo story very quickly?
Yes.
Hal Harvey was my best mate. Hal used to run Blue Water Tackle, and he was Lisa Harvey's husband. He died of cancer a few years ago. Anyway, Hal was my best mate, and he was driving up north on a fishing trip, as he always used to do. And he used to write articles for fishing magazines and the like. He's always after some article, and he's driving up there, and he's north of Carnarvon, and they'd newly painted the side of the road, the white lines, and he's driving along, and he slowed down, he stopped, he reversed out, he got his SLR out, took a picture, and got back in the car. And what they'd done is there was roadkill, and they just painted straight over the top of this roof. I love being Australian. How slack is that?
Yes, I have seen that. There's a photo in America which was like I don't know what it was, a raccoon or some creature, and it's got orange double yellow lines painted on it in the center of the road.
So the states are slack too. That's good. Yeah. Carry on with the story, Peter. Sorry.
Look, just parking, because I didn't get a chance to talk about it. My parking doesn't ever work in a car park, and I'm not quite sure whether
out of all the places
streets. But what it did one time was, as I reversed in, and then as I was reversing in, and I'd already stuck my the rear end of the car in the spot, it then came up with a outline of the parking spot and would guide me in there from there. And so I thought, it wasn't giving me any warning but to P sign or anything like that. It presumably only happens on the streets, and despite being a fairly generous hospital car park, it wasn't. It's never let me park like normally. You sort of pull up. You have to go less than 16 kilometers an hour for a parallel and a 8 kilometers for a perpendicular or something like that. There's an extra speed limit. Now the other thing was, I was just looking that up, because I couldn't quite work out whether this was something or not. But what they did say, this was a problem in 2014, and they used to have to do a reset. you know, turn the car on and off. So to fix that, there was actually a problem. I presume it's not a problem now, but it's just I've just not been able to do a proper sort of,
maybe try and find some. To be honest, it doesn't come up with perpendicular offerings very much at all. It's in my car, it's more likely to do a parallel parking offering. And you're right, my car has several times done a Johnny come lately, like I'm already 3/4 in the perpendicular bay, and then it suddenly goes, well, I could park this for you. And it's like, yeah, well, I've done all the hard work. And sometimes it actually shows, the car at a weird angle to what it thinks is the parking bay. And I'm thinking, well, I'm perfectly straight in. I don't know what you'd do if I let you have a go. And perhaps I should do that experiment now. I've got full dash cam, because that would be interesting. Oh, speaking of which, this is something. Well, it wasn't really that funny, but I think Damon, who watches us in Half Hour Slabs, and big shout out to you, Damon. Even if your car is burnt orange, I was parked next to his car, which his wife had parked to charge at Riverton Shops.
So he says in a watermelon shirt.
So I park next to his car, plug in, get a kebab or whatever it was, walk back to my car. I unplugged the car, and my car's to the left of his. So I then walk in between our two cars to get to my door, which my car very generously offers to open for me, and then forgets to actually stop opening. So it just opens and bangs into Damon's passenger side of the car. And it's like, oh, did you have to do that? You know, from one Tesla to another.
You'd never be able to match that wrap.
Oh, I know. And it's like, oh, you know, that wrap's going to cost, you know, because you've got to replace the whole door. And I didn't even bother. I was in a bit of a hurry. I didn't even bother looking. And it was funny because Damon's wife must have sent him a photo of the two cars side by side, just as in coincidence. So he then forwards that photo to me. So then I sort of wait until I get home, quickly just use my phone to view the footage on my MCU, and I send him the footage of my car's door slamming into his. And yes, anyway, as it turns out, the good news was that there was no visible damage, so it was good.
So he's actually got a Cybertruck under that wrap, you know that. But...
Oh, stop saying the C word. It just gets us all tetchy. It gets us all tetchy every day. You know there are. Is it Joe Tetmeyer? He does drone footage of the Gigafactory, Tesla Gigafactory, every day, every single day
in Austin.
In Austin.
The good thing about a Cybertruck, though, is you won't get any parking dings because it's too wide to park.
Yeah. Well, it's a tank anyway. It's you can't dent it.
But it's 3%.
Tried.
It's 3% smaller. As Elon, it's funny because he's been flip flopping between. Yeah, we have to make it 3% smaller because, and then he went on to say, oh no, we're just going to make a super duper American version, and we don't care how big it is because everything's bigger in America. But one of his later tweets, I think last week, has reconfirmed that the design has been completed, it's finished, and it is 3% smaller.
Is that so? That's so Jay Leno can actually get it through the boring tunnel.
But it's not 3% right around, because I don't think it's 3% lower than it was before. So it must just be some dimensions that it is 3%. It's not right around, I don't think.
I think it's 3% shorter. Yes. I think its length was the biggest issue for most garages.
And it's still too long for a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's fine. You don't need to park it in a garage.
Leave it outside because the rain won't dare fall on it.
Exactly.
It will not. It wouldn't dare.
And if it does, rust won't dare.
No,
near it either. So
no, this is proper stainless steel, not stains less steel.
So while you're on that, what can happen is this. See Megan there, right? Can you see the picture of her in a dress?
Yes.
And my wife's cousin wrote this on Facebook. You've got to admire her for pressing on with the interview, despite a pelican shitting on her. I've had a good chuckle over that one. That's a good one, isn't it?
That is very funny. I was just about to hover on the pause button so I wouldn't have to like cut this bit out later on, but it's all good. But yes,
just a couple of things. So one story and two questions. My wife has a ice Mazda, which in fact I just happened to pass, and it's got a shitty a panel gap on it. It's really just, I think it touches. You know, it's you know. I mean, I was quite surprised that it's perfect and so on. Anyway, because I have to charge, and I've got to stay in the carport to do that. We had to ship her car out in the yard, and she's had a good nose put out of joint because she's always had pride of place in the car park. And my 18-year-old Commodore is always sat out in the sun and in all sort of weathers and so on. But anyway, it was going to hail or something like that, and so we said, look, can we try and fit the two cars in? And so we could actually fit the two cars in. I mean, she has to scrape against the plant, and I actually put a piece of pipe up so that the poly pipe, so that I would hit that first before I hit the concrete pillar. But I've always got 2 feet to spare because I'm just hopeless at parking. But anyway, so we actually managed to fit these two cars in, but of course I can't get out, and I have, you know, my sort of problems. I have to put 2 feet down, and it's actually quite difficult to get out. So what I have to do is line it up, summon it in. No, sorry, get out, then summon it in, and do the reverse procedure. I've got to summon it out to get so I can get into it. So
well, get your wife to do it in the Mazda.
Yeah, well, she thinks it's fabulous, and she said that, you know, she's got a front-facing camera so you can see, which I must admit, I dare say is a very good reason not to have that, because you don't want to sort of have people just relying on that to drive. But anyway, that's the summoning bit. The other thing is, look, why do we actually have a park thing on the stick, and why do we have a neutral? I don't understand either, because the car will automatically park. It'll nag you if you haven't, if you got out of the car without parking it. But you know, if it does that anyway, why do we need a park? And secondly, why do we need neutral?
Right. Well, I can answer the why you have a park button, because the park button becomes the proxy for the off switch.
And the handbrake.
Yep.
And the handbrake. So there are no gears in a Tesla. Literally, there's nothing. There's no gears engaged, disengaged, do anything. The induction motors are simply electronically driven forwards or reverse.
I understand all that.
And neutral is simply an absence of all drive, so it won't regenerate.
Yeah.
Neutral is basically for towing it or moving it, or basically towing it, really, or positioning it without the handbrake on.
Tow mode to tow it?
No. Tow mode, I think, is additional. I think that might include suspension settings if you've got active suspension and other things.
Model 3's got tow mode.
Yeah, I think so. You've got tow mode, you don't need neutral. I mean, you aren't going to roll the car without power at any stage, really. And I'd just be surprised if the S Plaid has got park, because it's minimizing buttons, and it hasn't got a stalk anyway. So
well, getting back to the park thing, one of our members had an unfortunate incident where his wife was injured, and I think, Pete, this has been widely publicised, hasn't it? Many people know this publicly, or has this been on Facebook?
A lot of people in the Tesla community know about it.
Okay, so we're not naming who it was, but basically a Model 3 was reversed into let's call it a garage, and the passenger got out, popped the boot, so reversed backwards towards a wall, and then the passenger gets out, goes around the back, pops the boot to get shopping or whatever out. And then
while the driver still got his foot on the brake.
Well, the driver was still in the car, and then proceeded to probably
reverse.
get out of the car, but the car was still in reverse. And then what it did was it then went backwards and crushed, I guess you could say crushed the legs of the passenger, pinning the passenger against the wall and I guess the Model 3's bumper bar or bumper. And
it did stop, but
it stopped.
Not enough room.
Yeah, it basically stopped. After gently impacting and pressing onto the passenger, and then causing soft tissue damage. So no broken bones, but not
bruising,
non-trivial soft tissue damage.
Must have been in creep mode.
Yes, it was.
It was. You're right.
Yeah. So Pete and I did some experiments in his car, and it was pretty cool actually, because we very quickly worked out that you can just jump out of the car, Pete. It's okay. It will stop, and it does stop. Although I must admit, the first time we tried it, I was hovering on the back seat. I was kneeling in the gap between the front and the back seat, so the car couldn't detect me. So I could then just reach over and press the park button if it didn't stop by itself. But it always did. But the problem is it would take between 0.5 meter and 1.5 meters roughly to stop under all the scenarios, which was you gently put your foot on the brake. If you put it foot on the brake harder, it will go into hold. So in hold mode, of course, it will just sit there. And in fact, if it's in hold mode and you get out of the car, it will just go into park automatically. But if it's not in hold mode and you're in reverse, it will actually, and you just jump out of the car. So Pete did this, he would just literally very quickly open the door and jump out. It would take between 0.5 and 1.5 meters to stop, which is fine if you're on a road and there's nothing around. So, and the little message says that it's stopped or put in park as an anti-drive-away or anti-runaway safety feature or something like that.
Yeah.
But so that's a classic example of where the park button on the end of the stalk becomes the de facto, well, it's the de facto handbrake, it's the de facto off button. Now, an argument could be made that, well, maybe, some ICE cars have gone to, because they've got keyless entry, they've gone to a start-stop button. And one argument has been made that, well, maybe Tesla should have that because otherwise you don't really know if it's on or off. Well, a human can just as easily forget to turn the stop button on an ICE car or press a stop button on an ICE car as you can forget to press the park button on a Tesla in creep mode.
And it's actually, that happened to me not long ago in the shopping centre. I was driving a ICE car that I haven't driven for about 9 months and just used to not turning the car off in my Tesla. I just got out of the car and didn't even lock it. Luckily, it was still in park, and came back 15 minutes later to find the car was still running, completely open. So
it's worse. It's worse in a hybrid. My wife's got a hybrid, and same thing. Get out, and the engine's not even running when you get out.
Yeah.
And then if you got the aircon on, the engine will kick in and start. So that's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
Actually, another member who he can dob his wife in another time when he's on next time, basically said the same thing. And I sort of just gently concluded that, well, I'm very sorry, but your wife is now incapable of driving an ICE car and therefore ought to be purchased a brand new Model Y when that's available, so you can be a 2 Tesla family, because once you've driven an EV, you're not capable of driving an ICE car safely. Because
you can't go back.
Because you can't go back. Why do you need to remember to turn something off? It's like
going from an iPhone back to a Nokia flip phone. It's just not going to happen. Or it's like going from an iPhone to one of those old bricks. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly. It'll be like us hopping on a horse and forgetting to feed it, and it starves to death. And it's like, I didn't realize you had to feed your horse.
Isn't the plate going to not have, it'll have contextual gears, or sort of front reverse. I'm sure it's
Yep.
got to take away the neutral and park. I mean, it's just so surface. Whereas the front and rear is usually obvious from context, not always. So, yeah.
That's true. Elon Musk has said that it will basically infer what direction it thinks you want to go in. For instance, if you drive home and you drive into your garage, well, then it'll know that you got in there by driving forwards. So the next thing you want to do is drive backwards. So it'll infer that automatically. But it'll obviously indicate that on the display screen, but it'll allow you on the display screen to override that decision. So there won't be a PRND stalk, but there will be a means on the MCU to override its inference. So if it infers incorrectly, say for instance, if you're parallel parked and there is no car in front of you and no car behind you, and for some reason you may want to actually go backwards to do something and it infers forwards, well, you can just override that. But and Elon Musk has said, look, trust me, once you've gotten used to it, you'll think that stalks really suck severely, and that'll probably be mostly true.
Because it will infer which way you're trying to go depending on where you are on the road. So if you're in the left lane with the arrows going left, well, obviously you want to be turning left at that intersection, not right. So, yeah, it should be able to tell, 90% of the time, it should be able to guess correctly, you would think, or infer correctly.
But there's always the option to manually override it. But then I guess initially you'll have to just have a little glance to make sure that when you put your foot down, that you're not getting that incorrect feedback. As in, you keep trying to push and go forward, and you keep going backwards.
You've only got 2 seconds to react, and you're at 100 kilometers an hour. So going forward about.
Oh yeah. Well, that's right. But yeah, it should be interesting. And the interesting thing too is that there's drone footage of most of the new S and X refresh cars have been photographed with circular steering wheels, but there have been 1 or 2 cases of the yoke steering wheel or the yoke.
Kilowatt's got a good photo. Yep.
Yes, but my little pet theory is that a lot of those cars that there was drone footage being transported on one of those on the car carriers. I would dare say that most of those units would be going to retail outlets, to Tesla outlets, as demonstration cars or showroom cars. So of course it makes sense for those to have the yokes because you want to show off the yoke at the showroom. But in America, the NHTSA hasn't yet decreed that the yoke is legal in the States, whereas the Netherlands
they haven't decreed that it's illegal though, right?
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. But they haven't gone either way. They haven't come out early and said yes, it's fine, and they haven't come out early and said yeah, no, it's not. But they said they're in continuing discussions with Tesla. So obviously it depends on how fruitful those discussions are. As to whether or not it'll stay as the yoke. But for instance, in the Netherlands, in the UK, and presumably several other jurisdictions, and I'm not even sure about Australia, if your law doesn't explicitly say it has to be a round thing, then if it's not round, it probably doesn't matter.
It has to be okay for Australia because it's the koala wheel. So surely it'd be okay, yeah.
Yes, that's true. And you can't.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, horses just have this sort of. It's not quite a yoke. It's actually like 2 straps, sort of to steer us. The 2 straps are sort of legal for a horse. So yeah.
Well, the first Mercedes, Carl Benz's horseless carriage had just a tiller. Yeah.
So, hey, change the subject. Has anyone seen The Long Way Up?
No.
Well, you've got to watch it. It's on Apple TV, and I've watched about 3 episodes, and it's brilliant. What they're doing is Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor are riding up from the South America up to Los Angeles on electric Harleys, and they're being supported by Rivian. It's amazing. The first episode, they haven't finished building the Rivians yet. One's just a body, hasn't got a motor or anything in it. And in 2 weeks, they get the cars together. They've still got switches and prototypes. And Rivian put in like, I don't know, 100 or something charging points all along the way at their own expense. And it's really interesting what they're going through, especially in the cold. And this one episode I watched, the Rivian, they didn't have enough juice in the Rivian, so they got this prime mover to take off the truck off the back, and they towed him up and down. So they tow charged the Rivians. I don't think you can do that in a Tesla.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
You can.
If you go on YouTube, and this is like 5 years old, this video. It shows a classic Model S being towed behind a dump truck, but it looks like it's being towed with like bed sheets or something. It's like a triangular sort of thing, and it must be about 2 meters from the back of this dump truck. And it's nighttime, and it's being basically towed, and it's got an old-fashioned. The binnacle shows an old-fashioned sort of speedo setup, and it shows it on full regen. So it's about 50 kilowatts of regen being pulled behind this dump truck.
And it actually makes sense to pull a Tesla in regen because it would keep the rope taut.
Yes.
And if the car in front was to all of a sudden brake quickly, well, it probably helps from rear-ending it as well. So,
but there are so many warnings. Don't tow a Tesla. It says don't do that. So
but it's got a tow point.
Yeah, but you're allowed. That's to get it up on top of the flatbed, but you can't tow.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you'd want to put it in neutral. That's what you want neutral for.
No,
so anyway,
like Peter
it's
was
a good
saying,
show. So Apple TV, it's a good show. It's very interesting. It's very electric, and it's really good.
What's it called, Richard?
A Long Way Up. They've done A Long Way Down and A Long Way Round, but this was about 20 years ago. And it's just, even my wife came and watched it with me. It's just very entertaining. The scenery is unbelievable. And they're going through the whole trying to find electricity, and they can and they can't, and they run out. And there's one spot where he's about 500 meters short of where he needs to go, and one of the bikes has run out. So they're following the camera vehicle. He just hooks his arm down the 2 windows, hooks his arm around the pillar, and about 10 miles an hour just goes all the way into town riding. It was very scary, let me tell you. But he got into town, and then they got some charge and stuff. Great show. A Long Way Up.
A Long Way Up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that is actually a good show. It's quite a torturous adventure, and it's almost South America is almost as devoid of charging as Western Australia is.
Oh, settle. We need Rivian to put in 100 charging points in WA. That's what we need.
Yeah, but they just be 15 amp outlets. Oh, speaking of which, I can't remember if it was that ABC News article that I had at the start of the show. One thing that I thought was quite stark was that they mentioned that there are no fast DC chargers north of Geraldton, and it's like, come on, there's no fast DC chargers north of Perth, because the one in Jurien Bay is owned by John Edwards, and the one in Geraldton is owned by our little club. So really, it's even worse than that. So yeah, let's hope they do something about it.
Actually, Nigel, you had a story about some Porsche chargers down where you are at the moment, yeah?
Yeah, so Porsche have obviously released their Taycan, and there's been quite a few Porsche chargers installed around Bustleton, Margaret River, which is where I am today. Kate Mentel's got a Porsche charger, you go in and ask them to come out and turn it on, and you can charge up. And they've got some bloody nice wines, and had to buy some. Swings and Roundabouts have got 2 push chargers. Bunker Bay's got a couple, but that's only for people at Bunker Bay Resort. And I think if you can afford to stay there, you can probably afford to buy a Porsche Taycan. So there's a few of them going in. And speaking to the guy at Cape Mentel yesterday, he said, no, they supplied it free of charge. We just had to pay for it to be installed. So they're doing what Tesla did. But they don't seem to be locked to push. I've been and charged on 2 or 3 of them, and they all work fine.
What are they? AC or DC or?
I was getting, they're Type 2. I was getting 11 kilowatts, so they're all on 3-phase.
Okay.
I haven't charged my car from home since I found about the one up at golf. So I just go up 4 hours, it's charged up. Thank you. Once a week. It's great.
Is that
where was that one, Richard?
Up at Joondalup
Resort. It looks
right, yeah.
It looks like this.
Looks exactly like that. Yep.
It's great. And they've all got that push destination charging sign as well, which has obviously been supplied.
Yeah. They've even copied the terminology, destination charging.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, I thought that's great.
But is it single phase or 3-phase? Is it
3-phase?
Oh, right.
3-phase.
It looks like quite a skinny. It looks like quite.
You can spec a Taycan up to have a 22 kilowatt onboard charger. So I'm assuming that they are 22 kilowatt as opposed to 11.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, our cars are limited 11, are they?
Yes,
yeah, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, not many of us that have got Teslas that have got 22 kilowatt charging.
Yeah.
Richard, have you got the 2 chargers in yours?
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
It was the only option that the guy that I bought my car off didn't tick, and it was the only one that I could add on afterwards. So that was awesome. And that meant that we could make Esperance in a day, because at the time there was only a 22 kilowatt charger at Lake Grace, which 4.5 hours of charging still sucked, but it meant that we could do it in a day rather than have to stay overnight halfway.
Yeah, nice. Apparently the Ravensthorpe charger, so that's obviously all been funded through the Perth to Esperance EVA crowdfund. But Western Power, that's all done. Everything's ready to go, but it's just been sitting with the council. So council can't seem to, it's been the council's getting the installation for free. They're getting the charger for free. It's going to bring in tourism, but they're still sitting on it. So frustratingly.
What charger will that be when it's up and running?
That will be a 50 kilowatt DC. Yeah. CCS2.
It's extraordinarily frustrating. It's almost as if they didn't want it in their town. Yeah. And unfortunately, Ravensthorpe is that critical location, basically between, it's basically between Albany and Esperance and Lake Grace and Esperance. So it's at that it's that classic crossroads where
it's about 375k from Lake Grace to Esperance, and Ravensthorpe's right in the middle. So for the cars that need it, it breaks that up beautifully. The problem is, like Harold said, see, with Lake Grace, they had competition from Hyden because the charger was initially supposed to go to Hyden, and the 2 towns were sort of fighting for it, and Lake Grace ended up getting it. But Ravensthorpe's got a monopoly on, any sort of infrastructure in that part of WA. So, yeah, they can afford to twiddle their thumbs.
Yeah, we had to have a little bit of a charge at both Williams and Ravensthorpe, by the way, and still rocked into Lake Grace with 2Ks left on the range both ways. So it's not like we could have avoided Williams or Ravensthorpe. So, and at Ravensthorpe, it was at the servo and the power kept tripping. And yeah, it was just It's not
Well,
easy.
there was a story apparently. So the lady that owns the Ravensthorpe Caravan Park, she's been, really great to EV drivers, etc. But apparently there was a couple of drivers recently who sort of gave us not the best name. So
So part of my our charging experience at that survey was to smooth the waters with another, also Richard. He was pretty annoyed. We couldn't. We tried to be anything as gracious as possible, and I think it helped. But he was pretty decent after that.
Yeah. No, it's just it's like anything. One's enough to give the rest a bad name. But,
exactly.
If they see there's enough, of reason, normal people, reasonable people that do the right thing, hopefully they'll be able to see that those people are an exception. So just for others listening, obviously, it's a good point to make. So JP Tesla, he's been moving to Darwin, and so he just completed a few days ago that leg. It's about 650k leg, and so Elliott BP in the Northern Territory, they were given a EVA socket as well as a destination charger in 2018, but they haven't installed it because there is no electrician in Elliott, and to get anyone there from the nearest town, which is 300k away, it would cost several $1,000s to hook it up. So they haven't hooked it up because they figure, well, when are we ever going to get that $2,000 back? We might see one or two or a handful of EV drivers a year. Even if we make a $5 net profit on them, it's going to be a 100-year payback period. So, it's just not going to happen. So, a lot of these places that do put the EV chargers in, they're really doing it to do us a favor. They're not making any money out of it. On the contrary, they're not even covering expenses. So, probably best to always offer to pay, and always offer to, always buy something, when you're there.
Well, you need a Sparky to be a member of the club and just go out and install stuff while he's on his while he's on his trips.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've got to install it, otherwise you can't get past this point.
Precisely.
Self-install. So he has a boot full of your destination chargers, and he just goes around the state installing them while he's exploring.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I know quite a few electricians, but all of them are booked out usually 2 months in advance. So trying to get them to go halfway across Australia to install something for free is a hard one. But
I'm not sure if there's anything around near Elliott.
So JP had to do that trip. It took him 10 hours, and he was averaging about 60k an hour to make it.
Yes.
So, yes, because he couldn't charge at Elliott.
Well, he mustn't have been fully charged. Is he going up to Darwin from Adelaide or something? Is that which?
No, from the eastern states somewhere, I think, wasn't he?
So he must be. He's Victorian, so he probably came across. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Melbourne.
I'll just put it onto. See, I mean, I came down the reverse direction, so I went to Dunmurra, which is the one place where I blacked it out because the generator overheated and the whole place went dark. Although it was daytime, but they couldn't pump fuel, nothing, and had limped all the way to Tennant Creek. So you can do it, and that's in my X, which has less range than JP's Model 3. But I'd say he probably wasn't fully charged when he left Tennant Creek.
Yeah,
so I think Elliott is just here.
Yeah.
But there are other places. There are caravans. There are actually, if we go caravan main sockets. Well, actually, the caravan park has got a 15 amp plug, but that's very slow charging.
Yeah.
And Pamu or Renner Springs Desert Inn also has a main socket. 15 amps. So that's another place. That's a place where you could have a 3-phase outlet, you know, if they were to install it, perhaps. So there are other places that have power rather than Elliott. But yeah, Elliott would be a great place if they were supportive of doing that.
Well, considering they've already got the destination charger, and JP was even offering to pay for the installation. So
yes,
Rob,
yeah, I guess it depends on whether I guess all of these businesses have to make their own decisions as far as how they deal with things like that. And I guess many of them are quite positive, and maybe others are a bit more reluctant. And yeah, let's hope that perhaps Elliott might come across the line. You know, Dunmurra, oh, sorry, that one there. This one was really difficult because this is actually on a generator. I thought there'd be someone else after me, but basically top location, great socket. But the problem is that this place, and Rob Dean's actually been here too. But at the moment they're saying that it's offline because I think they were changing generator because the generator they had was getting old and not working very well. So it is a bit fragile as far as if I just change the plugs to just standard, really without Dunmurra, you can't go north or south, basically. So Elliott would be a great circuit breaker or anywhere else. Because the next charging is at Mataranka, which is, and this is a great thing to remind people. There's a photo here, and I've said this before. I took this photo before I sort of, well, as I just got to the car, because I was charging it overnight. But what had happened was I actually plugged the car in, started charging it, then I was too lazy because there's actually quite a distance to the demountable room. So I drove my car back to the room to unload some clothes and stuff, and then drove it back after dinner back to the charging spot. But it's a bit hard to see, but basically it wasn't plugged. I forgot to plug it in. So when I woke up at about 5 o'clock in the morning at daybreak, I found my car had sort of, 60 Ks range. So then I thought, well, nothing I can do about it. So I just plugged it in and then went back to my room until 9 o'clock. And when it was fully charged or charged enough, and, carried on with my trip. So the story there is always be charging and always make sure that you've plugged in, because you don't want to get to your car the next morning and find it was unplugged the whole time. Yeah. Unless it's fast DC, and then it won't matter because it'll be quick anyway. Yeah. But anyway, that's one of those little war wounds that you get.
Actually, speaking of politics a little bit, so Northern Territory, Rob was saying they got given $173 million to upgrade some of the roads. But yeah, couldn't find a few $1,000s for EV chargers, obviously.
Yeah, which would be a rounding error on $100 million or $170 million. That's just a rounding error. Or
173 million. So
10% of that is almost as much as it takes to cover the entire WA.
Exactly.
Yeah. So and actually, I thought it was interesting on that ABC news article we had at the start of the show, whereby they felt compelled to say that particularly in the case of the Labor government, that was an election policy, although it sort of wasn't, because that was actually announced in December last year before the actual. It wasn't touted as an election policy. It was just simply stated as this is what we're going to do, regardless. It wasn't, this is what we're going to do if we win. It's simply this is what we're doing. So yeah, it was sort of interesting that the ABC at least reported it as here are 2 election commitments. But anyway,
well, 3 election commitments. Don't forget about the Greens. So they're promising 51 million. So
yes,
more than double the amount of the.
Yep, and with all due respect to them, I guess it's easy to commit 50 million if you're not actually going to be in government.
Well,
but if they hold some sort of balancing, well, whatever, particularly in the upper house or legislative council, sorry. Yeah, I mean, look, 50 million would be fantastic. You know, then you could have, well, we could do the inland highway as well. The Great Northern Highway, which would be great for Meekatharra and other towns. And we could go all the way to the to Eucla, which again is something that we need to do because you can't just stop at Norseman.
Sure.
And I mean, the amount of money is just a rounding error. It's 20 million, 30 million. It's like I've banged on many times before. I've got an on-ramp that was just done, a southbound on-ramp off Manning Road onto the freeway. And that cost $30 million for one on-ramp.
I can't remember the figures anymore, but I remember looking at a newsletter and I can't remember which, I think it was City of Wanneroo, looking at how much they allocate each year just for parks and recreational areas, just the maintenance each year. And I think it was something, you know, around the $100 million mark. So, yeah, and that's every year. And 20 million would do the whole of WA and, you know, last at least 10 years. So, yeah.
I think one thing on a positive note is there seem to be some feelers out there that particularly Horizon Power are very motivated to get chargers installed quickly. So let's hope that that comes to fruition. And, you know, presumably Synergy is similarly minded. Obviously, you know, after Sunday, well, let's call it Monday next week, once the state government is out of caretaker mode, then hopefully some fairly rapid decisions can be made and just get this thing moving. Because, you know, as we know,
Harold, you and Chris are on is it a working group with Synergy and Horizon?
I'm not. I think Chris is as part of EVA.
Secret.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wonder what Tesla's share price is going to do tonight. What's it?
He's probably just got a few 100 billion extra to carry around. So yeah.
Well, I presume that Mr. Bezos is the world's richest man again for a little while.
Elon was third there for a while. He was.
No, he was first. He was top. He was
first. He was first, and he was second. Then he dropped back to third after the big chap that owns Louis Vuitton and big LGB. It's got 70 luxury brands, and he's the boss of that. And he's worth 150 billion or something like that. So.
Oh right.
He's number 3, yeah, not Gates or anyone. So yeah.
So Tesla's up at the moment 3.8% roughly.
Yeah.
Almost touching 700.
Yeah, it got to 650 in a couple of hours ago, but unfortunately it's pumped back up. I say unfortunately because I'm trying to pick up some.
Yes, that's right. Because at the moment you're short Tesla. There, well, no, you're not really short there, Pete. You're just
never been short Tesla.
You just want to be a cheap long.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, I'm trying to add some more than I should.
You're trying to accumulate. That's right. You're going past your corporate governance levels of
those went out the window very long time ago. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you pick a winner, it's all good, isn't it? It's all smiles. Which I must admit, I don't know if anyone heard. Is it Roger Montgomery?
Yes, I saw him. Yeah.
Well, I heard him on the radio 1 or 2 nights ago. Can't remember if it was last night or the night before, on Late Line or whatever. Oh, not Late Line, Nightlife, which is like, you know, late night radio for the eastern states, but in WA it's 3 hours earlier. And it's funny because he was sort of saying, you know, how great the tech stocks have been, like, and that the big companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, the bigger they get, the great they actually increase their marginal returns. What do you call it? Well, basically gross profit or profitability, because they get, you know, synergy. They get
operating leverage.
Operating leverage. And he kept on lauding how great they are and their power horses of earnings, and that, you know, when they transition from being worth, you know, $100 billion to $500 billion to $1 trillion, that they're just making higher and higher margins, and they're just great economic power horses. And of course, I kept thinking, well, what about Tesla? And then he actually then goes on to say, you know, some people claim that Tesla's not just a car company and it does energy and it does this and it does other things. And he goes, but you know what, you know, I don't really know if I really believe in all of that stuff. And you know, for every Tesla's market capitalization represents $1 million for every car that it produces, whereas BMW is sort of, you know, $15,000 per car. Toyota is $16,000, Mercedes is $5,000, and blah de blah. And he was sort of trying to, again, incorrectly lump all of Tesla forever as just a car manufacturing company in its current state. And yeah, it was quite disappointing that and then a lady, actually it was last night, because a lady rang in and said, oh, she had bought Tesla shares at $420. This was post-split. And he goes, well, yeah, they haven't done all that good, have they? You know, they went up a little bit. They went up to like $800, and now they're, as of last night, they were 500 and something.
Yeah, so she's only made about 40%.
Yep. So he said, oh, like, I don't really know if Tesla's going to go up or down, but you know, they're a bit on shaky ground, and you know, blah de blah. And I thought, I hope that lady didn't get off the phone and then hit sell on her shares last night, because imagine selling on the open and then finding out that, you know, 8 hours later or 7 hours later, 6 hours later, that those shares have just gone up 20%.
Yeah, look, Roger Montgomery, he's a value investor, so it's very much a very different type of investing. And I've actually got money with Roger, with his fund, but it's a complete. I remember being at one of his seminars, would have been 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe even later, and I was putting my hand up and saying, "What about Apple? You know, why would you not buy Apple?" And yeah, I mean, he had the same sort of view on Apple back then as he has on Tesla now, as did Warren Buffett. And we know now it's one of Warren Buffett's biggest holdings. So these investors will buy Tesla, but it's just a matter of time. It's once it's in that, you know, value stage where it appeals to a value investor, where, you know, the multiples come right down and the earnings are much more reliable, much easier to defend, much easier to forecast. Yeah, you know, the value investors, they need to see the proof, and they need to have a reliable history before they'll invest. So it's a very different type of investing, but yeah. So I actually, you know, there's a trillion ways to skin the cat, especially in the stock market, and just because it's a different type of investing doesn't mean it's good or bad. You know, and you know, you'll go through different periods where a certain investing style is, you know, and value managers have known to have had to have, you know, underperformed the market for as long as 2 or 3 years at some point, but then they, make up for it. But
I dare say their risk profile is much lower, lower risk. And I mean, you can have that classic saying of, it's not so much timing the market, it's time in the market. Yeah. So, you could have bought, well, in the big crash of 87, if you had just bought put all your money to the share market just before it crashed and just waited until now, we have still got many, many multiples of returns, even though you would have bought at the very top of the 1987 market and sell out at the bottom of the 2020 market. Because you're in so long, you've got those accumulated gains. Notwithstanding, if you're in the Nikkei, in the Japanese market, they've been underwater for the last 30 years.
But look, it's the statistics are that the accounts that do the best, they found the people have either died, so hence why they haven't sold.
Nothing. Yes.
Or they've realized the people forgot that they still had those shares. Mm-hmm. So those are the accounts that have outperformed pretty much any other account. So exactly. That exactly goes to exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Timing the market rather than timing it.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful thing if you can, whether it's by luck or by skill, ride the waves. For like Alan Kohler tonight said, an $800 billion company to gain 20% in value overnight is sort of remarkable.
Yeah.
Actually, isn't that pushing on the Nasdaq's
limits? Yes, circuit breakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, probably.
So, I mean, it was 19.6 to be technical or to be precise.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just bumping up against that, possibly.
And it actually went to about 21.5% or something if you include after hours trading. So,
yeah, interesting. And we're only about 7 minutes away from when it's opening. So who knows? But of course, how many times have you seen it where it's been sagging at the start and then it will shoot up, or it's been quite positive early on and then sort of sag away. But look, it'd be great to have a number 7 in front or an 8. 8 would be lovely. 7's not bad.
Not just yet. Just give it a couple of nights below.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we need another fake death rumor of Elon or something on Twitter. And oh dear.
No, it's all good either way. I reckon one thing what's worked for me is having one account that's just a long-term account that I just don't touch. I might add to it, and then, but I'm a human being like everyone else, and human beings think they know best. And so, there'll be times when you think it's a good time to buy and times when you think it's a good time to sell, and you'll probably get the selling decision right. And then you'll be waiting to come to buy back in. And just like that 20% yesterday, you might miss it. And then you'll never buy back in. And you've been shaken out of a trade that was perhaps you're planning to hold for 30 years and you got shaken out of it. So that's why I have a separate trading account. And that's where I can satisfy my urges to trade. And then I have a long-term account that just sits there and it accumulates.
So you can have like a little sand pit that you can play with.
Exactly.
A little bit of play money, not play money, but
exactly.
Well, I can't wait for tomorrow's comment. I said to my stockbroker, "Oh, I think it's time to buy." He said some more, and he said, "Dare I say it, with a PE of 934
God.
plus, it probably has further to fall."
Oh.
So I can't wait till tomorrow's comment
So
So
this,
I don't know whether he did or didn't.
so this is not
Wow.
personal financial advice, and nothing that we say on this show has any financial advice whatsoever. But the last thing that anyone can ever talk about on a growth stock is PE, price to earnings ratio.
Absolutely.
Because it's just meaningless. It's just
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
just meaningless.
Because you know, we were talking about operating leverage, which is, you know, give it a year or two, and those PE ratios can crash. You know, they can go from 900 to 50 all of a sudden. You know, and yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It's just nonsense. You know, if you're growing your earnings at 50, 60%, if you're growing your volumes at 50, 60% a year, I mean, what do you expect? You know, for a company that's got one of the biggest addressable markets in the world.
Well, Tesla produced as many cars last year in a pandemic as it, or almost as many last year as it did in all its previous years combined.
Yeah, exactly.
And this year they're on track to produce roughly 700,000 at least.
Which will be about 50% of its total cars ever produced.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So
and a year after that, will probably be around, you know, 1.1, 1.2 million, if not more. I mean, they've got a shot at cracking 1 million this year. You know, that's not completely out of the ballpark. So if they do 1 million, you know.
Yep. And 2023, I think they're talking about 2 million.
And 2030, they're talking 20 million.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Elon has said that numerous times. So that's the trajectory. That's what they're aiming for.
That's right, because he did say several quarters ago that they're aiming at 50% annual growth, compound annual growth. But he then said was it Q4 or was it Q3 last year that it's actually going to be more than 50%. It's more like it's closer to 60.
Yeah.
You know, if you could have 25% annual growth on any company, it's worth a fortune.
Actually, Carmen, you might want to direct your broker to, there's a CNBC interview that was done with Ron Barron. So he got into Tesla very early. He's made 20 times his money, and the whole interview was actually about him selling his shares for no other reason but the fact that he's made 20 times his money. But he's only shaved his position. I mean, he just had to. He was such a big portion of his funds, so it was more than 50% of his funds. So, but yeah, he went through a valuation, and even if you do a very simple valuation, you'll find that today's valuation, all it's really covering is the automotive part of the business. And in that interview, he basically says, so you're getting autonomy for free, you're getting energy for free, you're getting rider hailing for free, you're getting, all the other potential revenue streams that Tesla will be in a position to exploit. So, once you've got full self-driving, you've got the customer's attention for an hour or half an hour of the trip with two screens right in front of them and for them nowhere else to look. That's got to be worth an arm and a leg. And, not to mention the apps that you can sell and, all the rest of it. But then, things like the HVAC system, things like insurance, which they'll have a natural competitive advantage in. You can just keep on going. So, and they've still got plenty of, they've got a $25,000 model to come. They've got the Cybertruck to come, which is going to be, I think that's going to be, everyone's saying the Model Y will be the biggest selling car, including Richard Chapman over there. Had a bit of back and forth on Twitter about that one, saying that the Model Y is going to be the biggest selling car for Tesla. I actually think, don't be surprised, the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
that's a real
right.
I have to agree.
That's just that is just going to be absolutely mind-blowingly sick. It's just,
If they can keep to the price though.
well,
I think the price is pretty much locked in. It's just what are we going to get for it?
Oh yeah, the price and the absolutely screamingly powerful tri-motor, the dearest version that will do 0 to 102.9 seconds and tow in America 7 tons and in Australia at least 3.5 tons, is a mere $135,000 delivered, all in GST, tax, everything.
And he can out-tow a F-250 and outrun a Porsche 911, and there's got to be an update to it. He said in Q2 sometime.
Yes.
So, yeah, apparently they're tweaking.
It did just worry me a little bit when Musk was saying on that Joe Rogan podcast about, they're going to have to choose a size for the battery. Now, does that mean choose which of the 3 versions they're going to do first?
No, I think he was referring to the size the battery needs to be in order to meet its range. So basically he's saying we're in a position now that it's not like this, we're going to have to go to the limits of what's possible to be able to deliver what we've promised. It's more like we're in a position to choose now, because it's like, how much range do you really want? Do you want 1,000K? Do you want 2,000K? And he used that example. It's like with a ICE car. Do you want an ICE car that does 5,000 kilometers?
No, that was.
It means you're carrying around a whole lot of fuel unnecessarily. So you're carrying around a big battery, which 90% of the time you'll never get to use. So
the thing is though, right? Like, if it's a heavy nickel content battery, so you're not going to be keeping it more than 90% charge regularly. So say you've got 1,000 Ks range, so you're now down to 900 Ks. You don't really want to go below 20%. So you're now down to a 700 K range. And now if you're going to tow, something heavy up a hill at night in winter, you're going to be chopping your range in half at least. Yeah. And now you've got 350 Ks range. So suddenly that kind of,
Yeah, but I think what he's saying is, with superchargers and the network and all the rest of it,
that's the key.
And you'll do that once or twice or 3 times a year. So it's not worth carrying all that extra battery capacity around.
Saying that if you are going to go out into the bush, which is for camping trips where you are going to probably be a long way away from superchargers,
and if you're off-road, using a lot more energy.
Exactly. And if you're going to be remote camping where there's no power, it's just you would want.
Well, you'll have your solar panels over the bed.
Well, I'm not sure if that's actually going to be.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like. Didn't sound good,
and it sounds compelling that the reasons why, because is it worth the extra weight and complexity and cost and for not much? I would still like it as an option, but I do. I'm just hesitant that there's this assumption that you'll just have superchargers everywhere, which we know, you're never going to get a supercharger out in the middle of real nowhere.
But I think getting back to the specs on the website, I think you're right, because the way Elon was talking to Joe Rogan about choosing batteries, and he was sort of,
well, he said we need to pick a range.
Yeah, he sort of implied that maybe the range will be less than they promised. I think
maybe he means it'd be more, but
if you look at the specs, the single motor rear-wheel drive has 250 miles, and then the dual motor is 300. Now that may not be that may be the equivalent.
300 plus.
Sorry?
It's 300 plus, is it not?
300 plus.
It is, yeah.
To 250. Now, some of that might be the greater efficiency of having 2 motors with different gear ratios, like you do on the Model.
True. Yeah, good point.
But then the tri-motor is unashamedly 500 miles. That's 800 Ks.
500 plus.
Yes. Yep. So,
which means it probably come out with that and then software updates and further
and don't
improvements.
Forget Yeah, and this version here in Australia will be landed at about $135,000 in WA.
That's what I worked out to as well. Yeah.
Imagine that.
It's a steal.
It's an absolute, and it does 0 to 102.9, less than 2.9. Well, sorry, roughly 2.9 seconds.
So it's going to be fast. It's going to rank amongst the top 30 fastest production cars on the road. It's going to compete. Compete with Ferraris.
Here's the other problem, though. It's like, where on earth am I going to be able to park it that I can charge it off solar? Because it ain't going to be in my garage.
Well, maybe you can just get, I don't know, just park it somewhere else. Just that's details, Richard. It doesn't. Who cares?
I've got about. I think I've got
it's a
about
good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that. It's like this.
You have enough time to build a custom garage.
Do you know? Right, you've taken my thoughts out of my head, because I was thinking, I wonder if there's just a little bit of land around, you know, around the next few streets somewhere I can put up a garage and put solar on it and all that. So,
well, I've got bad news for you, Richard. I know for certain that the councils, you can only put solar on a habitable building.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for
You
instance,
can have a granny flat attached.
Well, yes, no, it might be a granny flat, because a granny flat is attached to is not attached. It's on the same block as another building.
Right.
But if it's a vacant block, you are not allowed to put solar panels and say, let's call it a carport or a garage with solar panels, and just leave it at that.
Well, what about an office?
Habitable premises.
Yeah, but all you need to do is have a kitchenette or a toilet.
Yes. But then you're up for increased. You got to pay for sewage and water, because if it's a vacant block, all you got to do is pay for drainage. But if it's a habitable premises, you got to have sewage and water, and the rates, your gross rental value goes up. So unfortunately,
you can, Harold, have it as a commercial building though, and then it doesn't have to be. But then it means you've got to get a structural assessment done, council approval, which probably add a couple of grand. But yeah,
the only way I'm thinking of justifying the cost is by just having it, renting it whenever we're not using it. So, so that might go hand in hand with that.
Or you could build two and rent one anyway.
Sure. I'm trying to pay my mortgage off, you know, Carmen.
you could make a double story and rent out the top as a studio.
Yeah.
Well, just draw down against your mortgage, buy Tesla shares, and when they go 2 bag or 3 bag, then you can just pay for it easy.
Yeah, and then get hit by 52% tax every time I do it.
Oh yeah. No, what you do then is you get a margin loan. This is not financial advice, but you get a margin loan, and that's tax-free income, because it's not deemed as a capital gains event. So you actually borrow against the value of those shares, but just make sure that Tesla is volatile, that it doesn't hit the sell price or the margin call. You don't get a margin call.
Well, don't leverage to.
Don't leverage to that amount. No.
15 or 20% or something.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But then again, Tesla has come back. What's the biggest drawdown that Tesla's had? It's been 70, 80%. Has it been something like that?
Well, in
Bitcoin definitely has.
In March, it went down a fair bit.
Yeah, so that was
62. I think 62%. I think Tesla's gone down 30%, 15 times, has gone 40%, 3 times, and 62% in March, I think.
Oh, there you go. So if you stay under sort of 30% leverage, at least historically, you hopefully avoid a margin call.
Yeah.
But you know what? I did that mistake, Peter. So during the GFC, I had a leveraged account. And I was leveraged to about 60%, I think. And but what I did is I put in some put protection, and I could sense that the market was starting to pull back. So I doubled down on my puts, and that all worked really well. But I cashed out when the market was down about 40%, looking at historically how many times it's been there over that period of time, etc. And that was the biggest mistake, because the market just kept on going. And yeah, I ended up getting, I ended up selling my stocks, because if I didn't, I would have got a margin call. But then I managed to call the day that the market turned around, the low of the day. I went in and bought it all back, plus more, and did the biggest mistake. And this is why I'll have always this is the lesson I learned. I always have 2 accounts, one for trading and one for long term. And about 3 months later, got shaken out. The market started coming back. So I sold everything out, thinking nothing's changed. This is going to be a double bottom. And I was right for a couple of, for a little while, and waiting for it to come back more. And it didn't, and it took off and never got back in. So and that's cost me a nice bundle.
696.50 at the moment.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it got up. It was over 700.
Yeah.
But that thing that Pete was describing, it's a classic where some people, they'll have money in a superannuation fund, which because of some economic downturn or whatever will lose a lot of value. People will get frustrated and go, well, I'm going to take it out of that fund and put it into cash. But of course, what that does is it crystallizes those losses. And when the market invariably recovers, you lose it. And you don't get, you've actually lost real value because you don't get that recovery.
But simple maths tells you that if you crystallize a 50% loss, to get back to where you were, you got to make 100% profit.
Yes.
So
double. Yes.
Yeah. And, and you can do those numbers, at 30% and 70%. And yeah, the more it goes down and you crystallize it, then it's virtually impossible to come back up.
Yep. Exactly. Cool. Well, it's been great watching Joe lurking in the background. I dare say the kids are probably fast asleep, and if they're not, well, they should be.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
hi. You hear me? I'm not putting the camera on, but yeah, I'm here. I've listened to everything.
Good for you.
I haven't actually sat down though. I'm just constantly on the move doing stuff. So yeah,
I've been
no
as
point
well.
having camera and stuff on.
No, it's all good because sitting is the new smoking. So standing up.
Don't do that.
Cool.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Well, it's been great. Another great session. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I trust that everyone else has as well. And shout out to Damon and to Joseph, actually, and Elon. Thanks for watching. Love your work. FSD Beta Australia. It's all good. Just bring it here. We'll enjoy it. We'll do lots of videos about it. Like to see it. In the meantime, everyone look after yourselves. Have a wonderful evening. For those people watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks
And,
all.
Right.
good
Take
night,
care.
Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.